Welcome to my channel and welcome to part 2 of how I got scammed by a business coach and how it all turned out in the end. A little golden nugget is, I guarantee you're not going to want to miss this because it is a really interesting story, on top of it being a really interesting and sad but also funny result for me, and I will elaborate on why that is toward the end, and I will give you my overall lesson that I learned from all of this and what I would do going forward, as well as what I think that the business coaching industry does well versus what not, and what to look out for. So in part 1, I talked all about how it all started, how I met this person, this business coach, what the agreement was, and why I decided to spend the $14,000 in the first place. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend you go ahead and quick watch that video. It is, I think, about 15 minutes or so long because it gives you all of the context needed in order to really understand why I went as far as I did, which is in this part right now. So where I left off is that I was basically chasing this person to try and get my money back for almost exactly 2 years to that date when I finally decided to take another pretty significant action. So I know that a lot of people that are in the business coaching industry, especially the bad actors that seem to promise the world and then not really deliver. And when people ask for refunds or show that they're unhappy and voice their concerns, a lot of the times, and there's channels on YouTube about this, they seem to basically disappear and either gaslight the clients and make it seem like it's their fault, or they also sometimes just completely disappear and people are out of their money completely. And that just never really sat right with me. I felt like it was utterly wrong that I wound up putting $14,000 on a credit card to afford these services. And then when I found out that it was actually not even going to be a legitimate setup, that he had no legal right to sell what he sold me, I thought originally, of course I'm going to get my money back. How else would that make any sense? And when he started ghosting me, the reality really set in, and kind of that oh crap moment and this feeling of dread where I thought, oh my goodness, one of the biggest investments of my life that I've ever made for the business is officially been a total dumpster fire, and I couldn't believe it. And so anyway, that feeling that I had, I carried throughout these full 2 years off and on with me, and I realized that I just can't let that happen, because clearly that guy never felt bad that I was out about $14,000 that I got nothing back for. He knew I had 2 little kids. He knew that I was really hustling to try and make my business work. And he also very much knew that this was on a credit card and that I was getting pretty desperate trying to figure out how to recoup that money. And ghosting me apparently was his only and best approach that he did. All these 2 years, I wound up sending, just as a recap, I wound up sending multiple emails with deadlines asking for my refund. I noted all of my information and why I wanted a refund and why I deserved a refund via email, all in writing. I even went so far as to hire an attorney. The demand letter was essentially something kind of my last thing at the time, I thought, at least. It was my last way to try and get my money back in some desperate attempt to make it official and legal and really make sure that he understands that I am serious and that I want my money back. And I'm not just going to go away quietly. He ghosted me again. He didn't even respond to the lawyer. So I spent, I think it was about $380 on that, trying to get those official letters to put more pressure on him and show him like, hey, what you did was wrong. You can still make it right, settle with me, send me my money back, and we're all square and good. After he ghosted me and still not responded to that, I kind of felt at the time like I was out of options. And this is where I feel like this might be a bit of a learning experience for some of you. I know it definitely was for me big time, is that rolling over and just letting things go that really bother you greatly and that you're so sure that it was wrong and you were wronged. There's nothing wrong with pursuing this properly to a point where you feel like you're okay with it or there was some sort of resolution. So, and here's where it gets pretty interesting. So, after that demand letter was not responded to, I actually wound up taking over 6 months. It was silence. I just didn't know what to do, where to go next. I kind of just tried to figure these things out. And he may have thought that this was the end of it, that by ghosting me, by just not responding, by having zero communications with me or the lawyer, possibly could have just made things go away. It wasn't until I found out that I can actually go to small claims court and sue for at least a portion of the money. Now, here's where I went wrong a little bit, because I was all completely new to this. I have zero legal background. And when I had originally asked the lawyer that I'd hired, if he were to take the case on, what would it cost? The cost was pretty significant. It was going to be at least $4,500, so $4,500 as a retainer, just to even get him to start working on the case, submit everything to the courts, send notifications out to the defendant, which is the guy, my business coach, and basically do all that stuff for me. But I didn't really know how strong of a case exactly I had on paper and legally speaking. And I was really afraid that even if I took him to court, I think I knew enough about the legal system that I was worried that he would, again, not, even if there was a judgment against him and I won the case, that he would still figure out a way of not paying me and I'm out even more money. So that was kind of the conundrum I was in, and I was trying to figure out what to do. Once I finally decided, okay, I'm gonna go take him to small claims court at least. The cap was $5,000. So I knew, even though I had tried to get more, but I kind of knew that was probably my cap. I submitted everything to the courts myself. I didn't hire a lawyer. And I wound up eventually just kind of really getting into that whole legal system and court system and learning it as I went along. And mind you, I run a small business. As you guys know, I have a small web design agency and also try to produce content for YouTube, which, by the way, this is also the main reason why I'm late submitting any other videos and I had a week gap last week, is because I was so wrapped up dealing with this lawsuit that just ate up a massive chunk of my time. And it just felt like I was just falling behind in so many ways. So YouTube was just one of those things. So long story short, after I got used to the court system, at least to some extent, and I knew it was in a completely different state than me, it was halfway across the country, I realized that, okay, I'm gonna probably hopefully attend virtually if at all possible, and I'm gonna be able to submit my case and prepare well, because even in small claims court, I knew that there was going to be part of me that really needed to understand the legal system well enough, the law that I am arguing that he broke, and all those kinds of things. So it was a lot of work. I'm not gonna lie, like, this was very overwhelming and very emotionally taxing for me too, because I never done this before, and I don't like to face people in that capacity if I can help it, because it's hard, right? Like, if you have a dispute and you have big emotions about this whole thing, and it's been going for me for 2 years, there was a part of me at some point where I thought, do I just need to let this go? Is this just, I cut my losses, I let it go for my peace of mind and for my sanity, but I decided to stick with it because this is something that also in business that I decided to finally tackle, is do the hard things in life, even if they feel terribly uncomfortable, especially if you know that they're right and if you know they need to get done. So I submitted my case, and I wound up getting a court date actually about 3 weeks after I had originally submitted everything, and the court has received it. I think there was a couple of days back and forth, but after that, I was pretty shocked how fast I wound up getting a court date, and that was almost a bit scary because I felt so unprepared and I didn't really know how to learn all this so quickly, and etc. But I took it one step at a time, and with the help of a friend that is in law school, and with the help of ChatGPT and Googling and all that, I kind of just created a bit of a strategy, and my case, my opening statement, all those things that I had no idea about, just to be able to plead my case and make my case and explain why I feel like I was wronged, and here was the law explaining that it was wrong and that it was essentially fraud, etc. So I was starting to feel fairly prepared. I felt like I had a strong case in a lot of ways. And I didn't really know what was going to happen with this coach of mine because I haven't heard from him in 2 years. He's ghosted me, he's ignored everything. And it wasn't until a few days before the actual court date that I realized initially, oh wow, he might not show at all. He might just ignore this again. Which I'm not sure initially if I would have been happy about this or upset. I still don't really know what would have been better because I don't fully understand the legal system. But all of a sudden, there was noise. I started seeing submissions online to the courts by him, and I realized, okay, he's starting to work this case. When I started seeing those replies and everything, he also had to be sending me documents to inform me of everything. That's just how the legal system works. And I saw his basically sort of a glimpse into what was going to be his defense and all that sort of stuff. And to be completely honest, I didn't feel like it was a very strong defense on his end at all. But I also know that when you go to court, there could be surprises. Don't be too cocky about things, right? Like you never know what's actually going to happen in the end. So all that being said, I prepared. I started feeling better and better about it every single day the closer court got. My court date was just recently. Again, I'm steering very clear of not giving out any exact information. I just don't want to put names out there and locations and all that. But I can definitely tell you that it was far away from me and it was in a different state, and it was quite the pain for me to have to deal with this if I wasn't going to be able to attend virtually. I did submit that motion to attend virtually, only for this to be pending online all this time. And just given that many courthouses nowadays allow things like virtual attendance because there was COVID and people got used to that, and Zoom court dates were sort of more of a thing. Just from what I've read online, I thought, okay, I might actually get this virtual attendance pushed through. I definitely didn't get it denied either, so I was pretty confident that it's probably going to be okay. It wasn't until literally the morning of my court date that I realized that I actually had to attend in person. And I can't even tell you how my heart dropped. I have 2 little kids at home. I have my husband at home who is a disabled veteran. It was just like my stomach dropped. I started crying because I was like, how am I going to make it halfway across the country right now within hours to spare? Actually, sorry, it was not the morning of my court date, it was the day before. So, because my court date was the first thing in the morning that next day. Correction. So anyway, so it was the day before, but it was the morning of me having to fly out and catching my last flight leaving from Montana, which, if you know Montana, we have some limited availability with flights and connections and all that sort of stuff. So it was almost about 1 p.m. that day before that I found out and got the official no from the court saying that the virtual attendance request is denied. And I thought it was maybe because I had possibly submitted it too late, but the court date was set so soon anyway, there wasn't a lot of time to react. It was just kind of a bit of a learn it really quickly kind of thing for me. And so I panicked, and I knew I had about literally, it was 2.5 hours until boarding for my last flight to be able to make it to my court date. And that panic moment setting in, knowing that I'm the primary caregiver to multiple people and I'm still at home. I was literally still in comfortable clothing. I didn't have anything packed. I made a desperate attempt to call that attorney back and said, if I give you that retainer right now, would you appear in court tomorrow morning and plead my case and help me out? And it was actually a fairly rude response. And I kind of get it, right? It was so last minute. I expected a no. The response was more like, well, welcome to court and I can't help you. I get it. I expected a no. It wasn't the shock of a no. It was just kind of the dismissiveness of things. The point here was that, okay, the lawyer is out and I can't attend virtually. So if I don't pack my bags right now and figure out my life for the next 24 hours with my kids and my husband taken care of without me, then I will lose this case, because if I don't show up, there's like, it gets dismissed, right? And I had worked so hard to at least recoup part of my money here. and I had worked so hard on this case. I prepared exhibits and evidence, and I made notes, and I had my opening statement and everything. I was so invested by then that I was like, I cannot just walk away right now. So thank goodness my husband jumped in and was very supportive, and he decided to say, okay, I'll help you book your last flight. He was on the phone booking that flight for 3:30 p.m. And it was crazy because it was literally the last seat on the airplane too. So I really lucked out, because any other flights after that, I wouldn't have made it to my court date in time. With that being said, I wound up packing. We organized some family to help come take care of the kids and everything else. We also have a bunny at home that I just wound up stocking up with a bunch of hay and water to make sure he's okay for the 24 plus hours that I was going to be gone. I put all of my client work on pause. I made sure that everyone was still taken care of. And I had nothing printed yet for my evidence because I wasn't going to attend in person. My printer gave out. Like, it was just an entire mess. Those 2.5 hours were just chaos. But I wound up making it to the airport, and I got on that plane, and I remember sitting down and I thought, oh my God, I can't believe this just happened. Like, 2.5 hours I was still at home thinking I was going to stay at home, and here we are. So I had 2 plane rides to make it all the way down there. And in total, I didn't make it to my actual hotel until almost 1 a.m. Then I had to finish my preparations for court, and I had to deal with the front office, the reception in the hotel, to help me print all this stuff out. But it was a lot of stuff, and they kind of were shocked about how much I need printed, so they charged me extra for that. But they did, thank goodness, decide to print all this stuff for me. Once I had everything in hand, I ate a quick breakfast, caught an Uber, and went over to the courthouse. I wound up showing up early just in case, to make sure that I won't run into any issues. And it was that big moment where I thought, is he going to be able to make it too? Because he also got his request denied last minute. And I did forget to mention that right before I hit the airport, he actually must have submitted a request for adjournment to basically postpone the court date. Because of this issue, because he also had to now all of a sudden attend in person, which he didn't expect, and that was denied. So I knew, I was like, okay, he's asked to cancel. So unless he didn't catch a plane in time anymore, and I think his connections were a bit more favorable than mine, then I think he might not show up. That was obviously my hope, because I didn't want to face this, right? I still was at this point where I'm like, I want to just stick my head in the sand. I'm scared. I'm nervous. I don't know what's going on right now. So it was kind of a gamble. I was in my hotel room preparing for the worst case scenario. And I was also, I didn't sleep. When I finally did decide to turn the lights off, when I finally did decide to turn the lights off and try and get some sleep, it was 2 a.m. And at 6, I had my alarm going to get up, take a shower, get ready, all that sort of stuff. I didn't sleep at all. I was nervous. My head was spinning with all this stuff that I just been through. I was worried about my family. I just been through an airplane ride that I didn't expect. Like, it was just crazy. But yeah, I wound up barely sleeping, really just kind of resting my eyes. And I woke up at 6, got ready, got myself some breakfast, and went to the courthouse. Once I made it to the courthouse, I walked up the steps toward the room of where the court was, and to my surprise, to some extent, I saw him immediately. He was just sitting there on his laptop preparing. I stayed calm, professional. I didn't really make eye contact. The room and the hallway was really big, so I decided to just kind of sit on a different corner and wait for the court to open the doors and for us to all walk in. The experience of the courtroom in itself was completely different than I expected, and I won't put you through details unless you guys are interested. If you're ever going to go to small claims, it wasn't anything like I expected. Feel free to comment below. Let me know if you're interested. I'm happy to talk about this, my experience in the courtroom, because it was wild. It actually was scary, intimidating, but also so interesting. Anyway, so before we got to plead our case and before the judge decided to hear us out and start the trial, he actually said, I want you to try and go outside and attempt to settle this thing first. That was a huge surprise to me. I didn't want to go out there with my ex-coach, me, and then some person that was kind of mitigating the whole situation, which was not the judge, by the way. Uh, and but I kind of saw the point, because in a nutshell, part of the thing that I learned about the courtroom and how the rules are and how it works, even if you get a judgment against somebody, actually collecting the money is a whole nother issue. And that is exactly what's been scaring me all this time. So we went outside, and I had literally 1 minute to explain what my problem is and why I feel like I should get some money back. And I got cut off, and the judge already wanted a decision, and so we had to really hurry up. We had literally minutes to decide this thing. And as the defendant, my opponent, I wanted to say, had a turn to quickly speak, he really got cut off immediately, and it just said, okay, let's talk numbers. So I knew that my max was 5,000 that I could recoup in small claims without a lawyer and all that sort of stuff. He had offered 4,000. And this is where it gets really interesting and emotional for me. I said, okay, well, let's do 4,500 then, because it cost me over $1,000 to get here. And if my max is 5,000, and I do believe I have an incredibly strong case, I feel like I could have probably pushed 5,000 even, but I felt like, okay, 4,500 sounds fair enough. It's still so far from my 14,000, but okay, here we are. This is the reality. And he got a bit quiet and upset. He started looking away, and it wasn't until the lady had asked, the lady that kind of navigated this whole thing with us, said to him, okay, well, when can you pay this by? He went right into this short little tangent of like, well, the way funding comes in for us. And in my head, I was thinking, what are you talking about, funding? And for us, as far as I know, and that's always been this way, and it still seems that way, it seems to just be him doing coaching of some kind, and there is no team. It's not a big company or anything. So full disclosure, this was me kind of instantly sitting back and thinking, I think he's trying the fluff again. This is what I've been through before, before he ghosted me, is a lot of talk, but really nothing behind it. I also did realize that there was a lot of fluff that was just absolutely dishonest on the website, claims made that weren't really true, couldn't have been true. And here's why. Because when the lady had said, okay, well, if you can't afford the lump sum, can you make payments? At some point here, he started crying. And this was hard for me, and I'll explain why that was. It was hard because my nurturing, introverted, caring personality part of me instantly was like, oh my goodness, like this poor guy, he's sitting here crying, and he can't afford to pay me. And I kind of felt bad, almost not guilty, but just responsible for his emotions right then and there. But then I had to sit back and think, wait a minute, he didn't give a flying, you know what, when he took 14,000 from me and I was pleading with him for 2 years, he didn't care. And that was a lot more money. And I have 2 little kids. And he knew the thing is, he was my coach. He knew my situation. I was so transparent. And so for him to not care all this time, I thought, why do I care now about him having to pay less than about a third, really, of what I had to give him? So that was that part. And then the other part about me was realizing, and that's the big learning lesson right here, is I realized that all the fancy suit and the fancy shoes and the fancy equipment and how he was portraying himself online and the website and all the claims he's making of, helping people secure millions of dollars in funding and all those things, I think, this is just conjecture, I don't know that for a fact, but I really think, just given his response, that he had to pay me back and he had to orchestrate payments to do it, that his business isn't nearly wasn't nearly as successful as it seemed to be. And I think that's a pretty common theme in this coaching industry, that a lot of coaches teach things that they haven't even put in practice themselves, and that they don't really know what they're talking about. They're just taking concepts from other people that they've learned and they're applying them on their clients or on their customers, but they haven't actually seen any success with it themselves. And that's a really, really tricky situation, because sometimes in theory, even I know things that make sense and that are really true. But for me to sit here and teach things that I haven't gone through yet and that I haven't solved for myself is dishonest. And whenever I do have a good piece of information, even for this YouTube channel, that I think you guys could highly benefit from, I always cite the source. I always tell you guys where it's coming from and why I think that this is a good piece of information. But I also make it really clear that I'm currently working toward that myself, or that I'm not quite there yet either, etc. So the coaching industry is just so full of all the lies and the fluff, and it's so hard to find a coach or a consultant that actually practices or practiced what they preach now. And I'm also really happy to tell you that I came across a local financial consultant that is none of that. He's not fluff. He's nothing like this. He's actually a really actionable, realistic guy that's been through it, built and sold a business. He knows what he's talking about. And that's also a fraction of the cost that I spent on this other guy. And it is just a completely different environment. By no means am I saying that coaches and consultants are just across the board bad. I think we all need somebody in our corner that can teach us something or restructure our thinking. But just be very careful who you spend your money with and how much you spend. And it will help you dissect whether or not these coaches that you're possibly investing in are actually the real deal or not. So going back to my court case, once that was signed and done, that he had agreed to the $4,500 that I had requested, and he had his little moment of emotional outbursts, I literally just went and got that paper signed by the judge. So now he has to pay me by the 1st of every month until January. And I came home feeling kind of a mix of emotions. I was so happy to be home. I couldn't believe this just happened, this whole thing. But also, I was so relieved that I came home with at least some money back. But another thing is, and that's kind of the bigger picture, is that I feel like I made a statement. And this is also why I'm putting this out here on YouTube, is because I want to show you guys that when something does go wrong, and when you feel like you're actually being wronged, then there are some steps you can take to sort of protect yourself, whether or not it's going to be the full amount. Like for me, it wasn't, but it was still something that I feel so proud of myself that I did that. I could have just stuck my head in the sand and called it a loss, but I didn't do that. And again, it was not just because of the money. It was also that I would probably venture to say that maybe this guy will think twice next time he'll do something with somebody, a business deal of some kind that isn't kosher, where he's selling things he shouldn't be selling, where he's possibly even lying to people. And that goes for other of the other consultants and coaches out there too. And if you're one of those coaches or consultants that I'm talking to right now, be careful what you sell. Make sure you sell quality. Make sure you actually deliver on your services. Don't do anything that you can't deliver. Don't make promises. People will notice. People will get angry. People will get frustrated, and it's just not worth it. I even remember the judge specifically saying in his opening speech, saying, and if you're a business and people want their money back, refund them, give it back to them. And I don't know, I think we were one of the only businesses in the room. There was other plaintiffs and other defendants, and a lot of it was like tenant, landlord stuff and just other disputes. So I can't say he spoke about us specifically because I knew he read our cases ahead of time, but I do know that it spoke to us either way. And it kind of hit me that I was thinking, well, if he's listening, he should have refunded me. He shouldn't have ghosted me. It was just wrong on so many levels, and I at least have a small little bit of victory now. And also I feel empowered to explain to you guys that it's not easy. It was nothing but stress. I stuck with my guns. I kept with what was right. I kept with what I thought was important to put the message out there. And I can say for myself, I say to myself and to my close friends and family, that's a case for me that I won. And I'm absolutely happy that it happened the way it did. It was a crazy life experience for me. I actually see the legal system with such different eyes now, but actually in a positive way. I have so much more faith in the justice system. The judge was absolutely amazing, terrifying and intimidating, but also amazing. I really respected him. He was so knowledgeable and so fair, and I couldn't have asked for a better scenario once I was there. So, anyway, all that to say, if you're coaches and consultants, just do right by your people. And if you're not, if you're on the other side of things, just make sure that if you feel like you need to hire help and people that are in your corner, make sure you vet them right, make sure there's not a lot of fluff, get information from them as much as possible. If they're the real deal, they're happy to answer any questions you may have, and you don't have to spend tens and thousands of dollars to do it either, I promise you, especially if you're just a startup or a small business. To wrap it up, I would love it if you got through this whole story with me, if you liked and subscribed to my channel, if you're anyone that wants to work for themselves, whether you already have an established business or you're looking to start a business. My channel is designed to be here for you, to give you all those digital resources that I learned, that I know, to have made my business over the 10 plus years successful and stand on its own feet and be profitable every single month. And I can't wait to have you be part of the Web3 creative family. I also just recently started a school group. It is free, but I can't tell you how excited I am about this, because any new things, whether that's a free ebook that I'm launching or a new AI product that I'm testing out, or any sort of industry information that I think is really interesting, it'll go out on my school group first. There's going to be more freebies, and this is the place. If you don't have a community, if you feel like you need other like-minded people in your corner, the school group is your place. I just started it, but I'm intending for this to be, within the next coming year, a really big and valuable resource to entrepreneurs, small business owners, or people that even just dream about building their own online business. That's about it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.